Okay, we're live, but we got to let it breathe just for a second to bring on our Facebookers. Y'all know the drill. Shouldn't take not but a moment. And we're back again. We're sifting through the aftermath. Almost there. Welcome in, everybody. It is the aftermath episode of the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me is my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. Zack, the Broncos fall in Indy yesterday, stepping on their own you-know-what at every possible turn in the fourth quarter, that is. How are you feeling? We got some storylines to get to, some stuff to kind of break down, but how are you feeling the day after? You've had to sleep on it, work out the hormones, so to speak. How are you feeling this Monday night?
I said it last week, and not to take anything away from these aftermath episodes, but I tend to feel the same way. I am not too emotional after a win or a loss. I tend to see things rationally, and I take out the bad of that game, same as yesterday, and I take out the little bit of good from that game, same as yesterday. And I realize, Chad, I can't overreact, and I caution Broncos country not to a 1-1 record when we haven't seen the best football they've played all season. And like we talked about last night, when they finally do put both sides together, and special teams, they're going to be a dangerous team.
I agree. It's way too early. And even Zach Allen today is like, I'm not even worried. Hey, you guys only got 1 sack after you had 6 sacks last week. He's like, what are you talking about? It's not a big deal. You're not going to get 6 sacks every single game, was basically his message. That combined with, I believe in the guys we have, it's going to be okay. But Zach, if you look at, let me pull this up real quick. This is according to, let me find it here. Almost there. Sorry, I should have had this queued up, but it just occurred to me. According to ESPN, Zach, the Broncos blitzed Daniel Jones on 24 of his dropbacks. He collected 16 completions, 267 yards, and then 1 sack. Zach, 1 sack. Now, there's another little piece of information. I'll find that, but this was just one of those games or instances where the quarterback was just feeling it, dude. Like Jones, he's starting to earn that nickname now, Indiana Jones. Like, tip your cap, move on to the next opponent.
He played well. The entire Colts offense played well. The offensive line is rock solid. I'm happy for Danny Dimes. But, Chad, the Broncos defense, they're too highly paid. Zach Allen, Nick Bonito, Patrick Surtain. You're expecting not necessarily 6 sacks a week or anything arbitrary like that, but not to allow them to convert, I think, 6 third downs. 16 of their first downs came through the air. They had 300 passing yards. You would expect them situationally to get off the field in clutch situations. I said the same thing last year against the Chargers, against the Bengals. You want a little more in crunch time from Vance Joseph defense, and it tends to crack every now and then.
No doubt about it. The wanting more, expecting more. Lots more to get to. Papa Bear checking in on Super Chat, one of our great family and YouTube members. Great to have you, big dog. He says, good evening, Broncos country. Hashtag 13and4++++. God bless the USA. Buckham ×3. MHH for life. Broncos for life. Let's go, Bo. SEAL Team Knicks. How was that leverage? BS. I'll say, look, the letter of the law is the letter of the law. To me, Zach, what irritates me about the call yesterday is that they chose to enforce it on that play. It happens the entire game on both sides. Like, that's a common occurrence. I don't think it was blatant. Sean Payton fell on the sword. You had the story for us today, though. Explain to people exactly what Sean Payton said in the conference call this morning.
First of all, you're right. It's like throwing a flag for DPI on a Hail Mary. How often do you see that? Usually the refs don't get involved on game-winning plays, but the refs were involved throughout yesterday, Chad. They threw 19 total flags on both teams combined. They were way too zealous, put it that way. But I'll boil the long Sean Payton quote down that he gave today about the leverage penalty and everything. And he said it's not on special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi. It's not on Dondre Tillman, the guy who was flagged for the infraction. With the 60-yard field goal attempt, it's different. And he had his big regret saying that it was on him for trying to block that kick when he realized it's a 60-yard attempt and maybe you don't need to put a rush on for that kind of play. So Sean Payton raised his hand. He took the pressure off of Dondre. I still think Darren Rizzi should fall on the sword a little bit, but here we are.
maybe he will fall on the sword when we hear from him on Thursday when the coordinators speak, but I have my doubts about that one. I think that was what you heard from Coach Payton this morning and what you're reading in, like at MHH right now is just Sean Payton being the bigger man and just not wanting to get caught up in a issue with the league, criticizing the refs, big no-no, et cetera, et cetera. So he's just saying, look, it didn't go our way. There's nothing I can do right now to change the outcome. So publicly, I'm going to say, hey, it was my fault. But if you look at the nature of Dondre Tillman's, what they called a leverage foul and putting his hand on the back, you can do that on a, what do they say, Zach? You can do that on a guard. You can't do it on a center, on the long snapper. I'm pretty sure it was on the guard. It wasn't on the long snapper. I could be misremembering that. But even if, you can't then use that as a launching pad to jump up and over, and apparently it's a rules act that is there to protect long snappers who are basically in a very disadvantageous. It's not like snapping a normal ball where your head is up and you're just going, what? They're looking between their legs, snapping at a good distance, so they're at a little bit of a disadvantage. But I think it's kind of a garbage rule anyway, to be honest with you, because the letter of the law when it comes to enforcing it, Zach, is just so. Do I feel like throwing my flag right now? Because it's been happening all day long. I guess I'll just go ahead and throw it now when the frickin' game's on the line. That's what I don't like about this one.
Well, you're right. It is a rule for a reason, but the Denver Post Parker Gabriel did something very interesting. He charted 54 extra points and field goal tries where Dondre Tillman was involved. And on every one of those 54, he rushed from the outside on the wing or off of the tight end. This was the one time he rushed from the interior. Why make that change now? Why fix what isn't broken? Why tempt fate on a 60-yard attempt, Chad? And Sean Payton kind of backs himself into a corner with this quote. He's getting paid $18 million. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. If he doesn't know whether to rush or not rush in that situation, that screams red flag to me. That's something that wouldn't even be acceptable for Nathaniel Hackett, let alone someone like Sean Payton.
True. Let's see what else is on everybody's mind. Like Naj jumping in. Brother, great to see you. He says, hey, brothers, we have now given up over 450 yards of offense to 4 of our last 8 opponents. When you do a deep dive, including the JV Chiefs game, Titans, it's alarming. Since the Browns game, VJ's scheme is struggling. Thoughts? I think it's a fair critique. Down the stretch last year, I think there was enough weird stuff happening, like with Riley Moss getting hurt and just the stakes rising the way they did, that, you could kind of dismiss. But I don't think they were like overwhelmingly good last week, Zach, going against Cam Ward as a rookie. Look, they held him to a very low score. And if you look at the yardage, obviously they did a good job, but it was a rookie. This is Daniel Jones. He was on fire. I'm going to give him his credit. But Naj's point here is a sage one. The scheme seems to be in a bit of a slump. And as you mentioned at the top of the show, too many salary cap dollars on that side of the ball to be giving up 400 plus yards and 4 touchdowns plus.
And how long do we have to go with Alex Singleton and Sternod in coverage, literally being put on skates by a rookie tight end in Tyler Warren? It's embarrassing, Chad. It really is. So get healthy soon, Dre Greenlaw, because I think that'll up the entire defense, Naj. And I see where you're going with this. Don't ever confuse me for a VJ apologist, but we weren't saying this last week. They did own the Titans. As far as I'm concerned, from where I'm standing, Cam Ward did look better than expected, but they had the sacks, they had the turnovers, they held them to 150 or less total yards. This is a thing where, because they looked so bad yesterday, we're talking about it. If they look better yesterday, I don't know that we're having this conversation, but glad we are, Naj. Thank you.
We don't want to skip over the Sam Bam, who was in here first. Thank you, bro. Great to see you. Appreciate the support and, of course, being a member. Legend. Sam says, evening, guys. Tough loss yesterday. Do you truly think that was leverage? Anyhow, at least Bowen, the offense looked a lot better. The run defense needs to improve. Hopefully we can get a win in LA this Sunday. Go Broncos. It sure makes that week 3 game now, Zach, a lot more. I mean, it was always going to be a big game, AFC West, right? But I don't know. It just adds even more urgency to this week 3 tilt.
They have the Bengals coming up after that without Joe Burrow. That could be a potential victory for the Broncos. They're going to have to go on a winning streak here because after that, you got the Philadelphia Eagles, you got the Jets in London, and that's just the first quarter or so of the season. So I'm with you there, Sam. They have to show up on Sunday. That run defense, they should be getting Malcolm Roach back, God willing. Dre Greenlaw should be playing, God willing, and we'll see what happens.
Was it leverage? Yes, to the letter of the law. But my question is, why weren't they calling it earlier in the game? Like the Colts. I'm pretty sure, if memory serves, if you look at that missed Will Lutz kick, notice how that was played by the Colts and tell me it looks any different than that 60-yard miss. But Sam, thank you, bro. Taylor Christensen, great to have you, brother. Another awesome member in the house. Says BK was fired for the same reasons, the mistakes that Darren Rizzi is making. So Ben Kotwika. Where is Evan Ingram? Dre Greenlaw has to play Sunday. Seeing Alex Singleton and Justin Strnad being juked twice is crazy. Yeah, there's that one replay, Zach, making the rounds of Tyler Warren juking the Broncos linebackers out of their cleats. But I told you guys last week, in fact, I told you my initial theory entering week 1 before the game was even played, that it kind of feels like they're circling week 3 for Dre Greenlaw debut. But we won't know more on that, Zach, till Wednesday at the soonest.
I mean, 6 touches, though, for RJ Harvey, 2 catches combined for Cortland Sutton and Evan Ingram. All this talk about Ingram being a joker, it's a joke so far. I want to see Ingram more involved. Absolutely, Taylor. I'm not trying to sound too negative on this pod tonight, Chad, but the offense to me through 2 weeks is a major work in progress, and it's not cute anymore. Now is the time to get to work because the schedule is getting more daunting.
By the way, Mr. Producer providing me here a little metric. The number of leverage penalties called per season, all right, in the NFL. Last year, there were 4 total. Year prior, there were 5. 2 before that, 5 before that. 1 in 2019, we can keep going back. 2016, there were 12 of them. But there were 4 last year. They broke the ice on the Broncos and at the Broncos' expense. Again, to me, if you're going to make that call, Zach, it has to be like a dude straight up jumping on the long snap in that critical moment, all right, where the game's on the line and the pressure was on. The Broncos defense did a good enough job to hold him to a 60-yard attempt. He missed it. It had to be him jumping off and doing YMCA in the air, basically, for me to throw that freaking flag. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm on the long snapper's back now, and now I'm going to do some jumping jacks. Oh, leverage. Oh, that's what it would take, in my opinion. That's what it should be. But it was very, very disappointing. I think the Broncos have a case to be pissed internally and submit some notes, as it were, to the front office of the league. But public facing, Sean Payton, he's fallen on the sword, so to speak.
Well, he should be pissed at himself, and the entire team should, Chad. I just think it's a little weak always to blame the officiating when the Broncos should not have been in that position in the first place. If Bo didn't throw that pick, they were in field goal range. I think it was 3rd and 3. If the defense could get off the freaking field on the last drive, they wouldn't have even been in that field goal situation. So I don't like blaming the officiating. It was ticky-tack, but the Broncos had that one, and they gave it away.
I don't want to... At the risk of repeating myself too much, because I'm sure we'll get asked it again on some level tonight even, but if you're going to call it in that moment, man, it has to be a blatant violation. And that one, again, letter of the law, you could, as an attorney in a court of law, you could argue that it was leverage. You could also argue against it, or argue at least on behalf of the defendant that, hey, he drove by that same cop, going 8 over in that same exact spot 15 times this week, and he decides right now is the time he's going to pull him over. Now, you're not going to win in a court of law with that argument. But again, when it comes back down to such a judgment call, instead of it just being a blatant issue, when the game is on the line, all that these teams work for and battle, the blood, sweat, and tears, it's just lame. It's just lame. What can I say?
Yeah, but it's like, okay, in that scenario, if you're venting to someone because a cop pulled you over and not the driver in front of you, what's the person say to you? That's how it goes. That's life. It's just how it happens, and you have to control your own fate as best you could. The Broncos were controlling their own fate until they weren't, and that's what happens.
Until they weren't, indeed. And that's really the biggest thing to take away here, guys, is the Broncos allowed themselves, after being in a pretty comfortable, commanding situation, second half, top of the fourth quarter, they allowed themselves to be in a situation as time expired where they were dependent on a
Right.
ref call either going their way or not being called or not going their way, etc. So there's a lot to learn from there. Sean Payton, once again, we're hearing it 2 weeks in a row now. I mean, I'm not sure I remember it being like that before. Maybe in the Russ season with Payton, but saying twice in a week in a row now that I'll be better, will be better. As far as the coaching staff, him specifically, kind of interesting, Zach, that Sean Payton is taking that kind of humble approach. Not very typical for him and what we know of Sean Payton.
No, he also protected Bo Nix, and he has for 2 weeks with the turnovers. And I understand as a coach why he's doing it, but humility only goes so far. I want to see results. He's the second highest paid coach in the NFL. Let's start acting like it.
Let's grab some member comments here. I'm gonna grab here. Let me see. Todd says, I just watched the so-called leverage penalty and did not see much basis for a call. It did appear that a Broncos defender put his hand on an O lineman and then jumps. Yeah. But the point is, like, are you putting your whole weight onto that back to leverage and make the jump? And is the guy flying back? I mean, I don't know. It's ticky-tack to me. And the timing of it was suspect. Oh, wait. He says, my question is whether that could be considered the normal pushing that goes on during a kick, or the Broncos player actually gained height from the move. I don't think he gained height. And again, if you go back and watch some of the other kicks that were made in that very game, let alone every other game under the sun in the NFL yesterday, you're going to see a lot of kicks that look exactly the same in terms of how they were defended and no flags fallen. String guy Roger saying, hi, Chad, Zach, and Scott, Broncos country. Relax, guys. A 1-1 start is not the end of the world. 15 games left to play. Let's see how they play against the Chargers. If we win, then all is good. True, Zach. But I guess that also depends a little bit in terms of all is good. That will depend a little bit on, how things shake out tonight.
Yeah, I'm not even saying this facetiously, string guy. You have too much logic right now for an emotional fan base. And I understand why the Broncos fans are emotional right now, but it's still a very long season. I said the same thing on Twitter. They're 1-1 right now, and they've played far from their best football. They played a good game on defense and a good game on offense. We have to see them put it all together. We both, Chad and I, have confidence that's coming very soon.
Good to see you, Ronk. Appreciate you being an awesome member. Brad, what's up? Be rad. Be cool and be rad, right? What's up, fellas? Hopefully the Raiders win tonight. I'm kind of leaning that way myself, brother. Mike Thompson, thoughts? The defense didn't implode. The refs did rob us. The Colts head coach did not outcoach us. That was one of the worst. The Colts head coach did not outcoach us. That was one of the worst coaching jobs I've seen. I'm kind of confused by the last two. I'm not sure. It seems a little incongruent, but the defense didn't implode. I don't know. Look, dude, when you give up nearly 500 yards, 164 or 5 of which are on the ground, and you can only get to a guy like Daniel Jones, who, look, he's never been a guy that typically shines under pressure. Like, there's a reason why he washed out in New York. Now, things are different. Sometimes changes of scenery make a difference, et cetera, but to not put the onus in any way on the defense, like maybe they didn't implode. It's not like they gave up 42 points or whatever, but Zach, that was a piss poor defensive showing in my book. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no two ways about it, Mike. Is the barometer for implosion 70 points allowed, like in that Dolphins game? Then no, they didn't implode, but they got no pass rush on Daniel Jones. They didn't turn the ball over against the Colts. They weren't this vaunted championship level defense like we've come to expect. And it's okay to call it for what it is.
Chris Bell jumping in, one of our newer members. Stoked to have you, buddy. Saying, good evening, Broncos country. The offense and defense just need to be in sync better. Better use this as motivation, just like the horrendous loss to the Dolphins, and get mad this is on everyone. I agree. Once again, this particular loss, Zach, has, a lot of fingerprints on it, all three phases. Although I'll tell you that if Bo Nix doesn't throw that pick, it would have been hard to blame the Broncos if they found a way to lose that one. But he did throw the pick. It led to a 6-point swing because they were basically going to be in field goal, possibly in field goal position. And then did the Colts get a field goal or a touchdown on that next drive? I'll have to go back and look at it. But either way, Bo Nix came close to turning in the kind of like steady 60 minutes and encouraging, like, oh, touchdowns, steady, until the like penultimate worst possible moment to not be perfect. And he said, by the way, Sean Payton after the game was like, I think it got tipped, that pick. I think it was tipped. Bo Nix said at the podium, nope, just missed. I missed.
Regardless, though, you have to wonder why the Broncos are throwing in that situation. As you mentioned, Chad, they were already in field goal range. They could have added 3 more to the board. It was a 6-point or whatever swing, and you would chew up some clock if you kept it on the ground with J.K. Dobbins, who was having a solid performance. So it goes back to the coaching for me, and still Sean Payton gets a little too galaxy-brained.
So the Broncos were on the Indianapolis 28 when Bo threw that pick. All right. Then the Colts drove down, got a field goal. So it's a 6-point swing. But even then, the Colts still trailed by 2. Bo Nix gets the ball back. Dobbins does some heavy lifting, carries it quite a lot, gets that stupid penalty.
Delay game.
Pardon me. That wasn't right there. That was the mystifying Adam Troutman face mask penalty. But, he gets him down to the Indy 24, and Lutz misses a 42-yarder. If Lutz gets that 42-yard field goal with 3:19 to go, the Broncos are leading 31-26, thus necessitating the Colts drive the distance. They would have required a touchdown. So, again, one of the things you love about football, Zach, is that it's the ultimate team game. Everything fits hand in glove. And each component of this team yesterday let the team down.
It was a collective effort in futility. I said the same thing on the gut reaction. It wasn't just the coaching. It wasn't just the quarterbacking. It wasn't just the defense. It was also Will Lutz. And I'm sorry, if you're this veteran kicker who's buddy-buddy with the head coach, then you have to make a chip shot in a dome. I'm sorry. In that situation, you cannot miss. That's why overall, Chad, I have not been impressed with Darren Rizzi. If anything, it's a lateral promotion from Ben Kawika.
So this is a point Scott's making on the leverage, and I think it's fair. The biggest problem with Tillman was that he came down on top of the center. That's the big no-no. So, to my jokey point about did he get up on top of the long snapper's back and, do jumping jacks? No. But coming down on the back. But then again, if you look at field goals in that game, extra point attempts, let's just keep it to field goals. I bet you that's a relatively common occurrence, dude. And they don't call it until then. So that's my problem with it, is that it just seems, I don't know. I've already repeated myself too many times on this, but back to the awesome members here. Conga Hydra, maybe this will temper expectations and people will realize this team still has a ways to go before they are actually Super Bowl contenders. And Zach, I think, I can't recall. We had so many comments and super chats last night in the gut reaction who said this exactly, but it was something to that effect that it might have been D-Dub, actually, now that I think about it, Dale, that, hey, man, people were getting a little too far out over their skis on this team's outlook. And it's not that it's not that we don't all wish and hope that the Broncos can go the distance, but let's keep in mind that it's a tough league, still a young quarterback, still pretty young offense overall. And, let's keep things in context now. And I think if nothing else, Conga, what D-Dub said, it definitely puts this team's outlook a little bit more in its proper context, which is they'll continue to be viewed as a contender. I'm still confident they're going to win more than they lose, but they got to prove to us that they can learn and move on from games like this where all three phases contributed to a brutal collapse in the fourth quarter.
Well, let's do a little market research. Raise your hand if you genuinely, honestly believed the Broncos were Super Bowl contenders. I mean, to the point where you'd put a mortgage payment on it, not just for clicks or clout. I don't know that many people genuinely thought that. I didn't, Chad. I thought my expectation was a playoff team, double-digit wins, and take a step forward from the wild card berth they had last year. I did not expect or even really hope that the Broncos would make it this year. There's always a shot, but I think they're a year away, and I thought they were a year away. Their window is open from the basis of Bo Nix being on his rookie deal, but as we could see, they have a lot of work yet to be done. They're a playoff contender, absolutely, but the people who genuinely thought they were Super Bowl championship ready this year, I think that says more about them.
And Mike says, look, why change my expectations? Not everyone is a downer or a worrywart. And I'm not one of those guys either, Mike, for what it's worth. You guys know this, who've been with us here on the MHH pod for a lot of years. You know, I'm an optimist. I'm not a Debbie Downer. I try to temper my optimism as best I can, Zach, especially when you have a large platform and audience with a fair dose of pragmatism. I expected this to be a low double-digit winning team, like of 10 to 12 tippity tops, somewhere in that neck of the woods this year. And my expectation was just, hey, they're going to get deeper than they did last year. They're going to go maybe instead of the wild card, the divisional round. But I'm also, Zach, been around long enough to know that when teams get hot down the stretch, man, all bets are off. When they hit the right team, hits the tournament with the right kind of momentum, baby, they can go the distance. I mean, ask the 97 Broncos, once again, who were a wild card team and the first AFC club to win a Super Bowl in 13 years. So, you know, it really depends on the team and the timing, but expectations, Mike, I'm not saying change your expectations. If you were expecting a bona fide Super Bowl and you were confident in that expectation, I'm not necessarily saying by virtue of that disappointing loss against the Colts, you should abandon it. But I would temper it maybe just a little bit in terms of, you know, hey, man, how ready is this team to get out and dominate? Like, you know, Chiefs fans right now, for example, Zach, I think they're tempering their expectations a little, but it's there's a difference, right, between 0-2 and 1-1. But I digress.
Yeah, Mike, no one's saying to change your expectations, but I think it'd be easier to know what your expectations are going into the conversation. For example, my expectations are unchanged. I still think 11-6 is what the Broncos will finish, and I'm not coming off of that. But I'm not going to be overly optimistic or blow smoke for the sake of blowing smoke. The defense was a letdown. They were far, far from championship material against Indianapolis, and they have a lot of work left to be done. I think both things can be true at the same time.
Naj's point real quick at 6:23, and then I'm going to grab Taylor. 2 games in a row now where secondary players are leading in tackles. That has to change. It doesn't bother me one at all, Naj. I don't lose any sleep at all when it's a safety. When it's a corner, I start getting a little tripped up over that. And it was Talanoa Hufanga led the team week 1. And then, you know, I think they co-led together, Surtain and Hufanga again. Let me double check that. Yeah, they co-led, Surtain with 11, Hufanga with 10, Singleton with 8, and then Brandon Jones, Zach at 7. So for what it's worth, I think it's a fair point Naj is making there. And then Taylor says, this is why I wanted the Broncos to trade up and draft Tyler Warren. I really wanted Warren as well, but it would have required a pretty significant trade up, and I wasn't willing to trade up to get him. You could have probably, Zach, persuaded me on Ashton Genty, but trading up for a tight end, he is looking good, though. I'll give him that. Tyler Warren, through 2 games of his young career, he's looking good. And meanwhile, Zach, you know, you got Jahdae Barron being used relatively sparingly. He's not a starter. He's your first-round pick. The team probably planned on him being the starter, but either he wasn't ready, Zach, or Jaquan McMillan wasn't ready to give up his gig, or a little bit of both there. But I understand why people this early are eating their hearts out a little bit, going, man, wish we had Warren.
Trade up to get him so they can not use him. Like they're not using Evan Ingram. They handed him a 2-year, $23 million deal. He has 1 catch. He's sparingly used. Warren looks like the truth. He looked like Gronkowski out there yesterday, Chad, juking everyone and making the Broncos defense look silly. I wish we had that in Denver. Still do.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so here's what Mike was he's clarifying what he said earlier. The defense didn't lose this game. They weren't the ones who missed the field goal, and they didn't throw the pick, and they weren't the ones penalized. Right. I understand your point that it wasn't them with big boneheaded mistakes in a fourth quarter, but their contribution to the death was by 1,000 cuts. Okay. They relinquished 400 and I guess I'll get specific one last time. 473 total yards, and Zach 167 on the ground, 5.2 yards per rush. So that's a big contributing factor to why, Zach, the Colts had 29 points on the board when it was all said and done.
If it wasn't for the defense, they wouldn't have even been in the position to kick the field goal. They couldn't get off the field. They couldn't cover Alec Pierce and Josh Downs and Michael Pittman and Tyler Warren. They could not stop a nosebleed, especially on that final drive. But people like to demonize one thing or the other. There are multiple culprits. It was the defense. It was the coaching. It was the kicker. It was the quarterbacking. It was all of it, Mike, not just one or the other.
And Mike, hey, friends can disagree, right? Like that's what's fun about these chats is we're not on here trying to exert or impose our opinion or our take on anyone in the chat. It's a dialectic. Sometimes you guys will say things to us or ask a question a certain way that makes me question my own take or makes me rethink things. And that's one of the things I love. I wouldn't necessarily call these debates at all, Zach, but when you're actually engaging in true good faith dialogue and dialectic, then people's minds are going to be changed. In this case, Mike's not changing my mind. I don't think David's getting changed here. He says the defense played like crap. They gave up almost 500 yards in offense. But Zach, I understand what Mike's trying to say. It wasn't a big oof from the defense in the fourth quarter moment, right? But once again, death by 1,000 cuts, let them get down close enough for the field goals, et cetera, et cetera. So it depends on how good your attorney is. Once again, I'll use a law metaphor in terms of arguing on behalf of the defense's culpability, yay or nay, in that loss.
Well, I love debating. Maybe I'll bring Mike on to Kelberman's Corner tomorrow and we'll debate. But I don't see why we can't have that, that talk, going back and forth. And I'm not trying to change Mike's mind. He's not going to change my mind. And I just told him not to change his expectations. But I think there were multiple fingers in the cookie jar, Mike. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah. 404 yards per game last year. The worst defense in the NFL allowed 404 yards per game. Now, we know that wasn't the Broncos, but that puts it into context for you how bad Denver's defensive day at the office was. Colin jumping in on Super Chat. Welcome, big dog. Thank you for the super. He says, I think Sean has a different meaning for Joker than we do. He thinks it's just like playing cards and you don't use the Joker. That's funny, dude. No, I think week one shook out the way it shook out, and Ingram got hurt in the second half. And I think they used him sparingly, even though they listed him, Zach, on Friday as a full go in practice. I think his relatively sparing usage in Indy was they're leery of his calf being a problem. They're leery of him missing significant time. So once again, it's another one of these high dollar guys that's on a pitch count where it's like, hey man, you could use that impact right now. You could use him out there, not Troutman, not Kroll. I mean, I got to tell you, I did not expect to see this much Lucas Kroll this early in the season.
That's kind of my point too. If it was like Pat Bryant, I understand there's so many mouths to feed, but you handed this guy $23 million. Let's get some ROI on Evan Ingram.
Yeah, and just I haven't looked at this yet, so I'll do it right now real quick. I won't do any scratch and sniff and throw it up there, but I'll tell you that Evan Ingram, let's see, yesterday, let me find him. He played 25 snaps, which accounted for, surprisingly, Zach, I'm actually surprised by this, 43% of the offensive snaps. Troutman played 36 snaps, which accounted for 62% because he's with Nate Adkins still kind of working back from that ankle. Troutman is the blocking tight end, and they did try much harder throughout that game to be a running offense. And then let me just find Kroll, 9 total offensive snaps, 16%. So Ingram was out there, Zach, a lot more than I realized. And, coupled with Gene, good to see you, buddy. Maybe the Colts are real. I think they are real. Are they going all the way? I'm definitely not saying that, but I think they're a legit contender this year for the playoffs. But Evan Ingram's lack of usage, I think it's a combination of Broncos are wary of that calf, but mostly the other side of the combination is the same complaint Cortland Sutton might have sitting here right now, which is I just didn't get my number called enough. I was doing my thing, but the ball kept going elsewhere.
And that's because I think Sean Payton's finally, hopefully figuring out they're a run-first team. You have to lean on Dobbins and Harvey. And when you do that, you can't spread the ball around to Sutton and Mims and Franklin and Bryant and your tight ends. There's a lot of mouths to feed, Chad, and I'm starting to think there's too many.
Yeah, I hear you. Brad, what's up, dude? B-Rad jumping in also on Super Chat. Thank you, buddy. The support means the world to us. I hope you know that. VJ, he says, isn't good. He's starting to get exposed. Well, when you look at it through that same lens, Zach, or from that angle that Naj brought up about how bad it's been the last, what did he say, 8 games? 4 of the last 8? Yeah, 4 of the last 8. Broncos giving up over 450 yards. Yeah, you got to wonder a little bit. Now, this is not to say, hey, let's panic and, like week 2 years ago, trying to get VJ fired or anything, but it's definitely VJ. Hey, spend some time on the Chargers. You got a lot of game planning to do, but I would also kind of do some self-scouting here and figure out why your calls, plus why are you running so much zone when you have the personnel to thrive in man? I don't know. I think they hoped that the combination of the pressure with the zone looks was going to confound and confuse Daniel Jones yesterday. But it's like he expected it, Zach. He was so money. And even Zach Allen today, he's like, ball just kept coming out. Ball was just out fast, man. We couldn't get to him.
There's aspects of VJ's defense that have been exposed since 2017. And can anyone guess what those are? We saw them on Sunday. The inability to cover tight ends in the middle of the field and running backs out of the backfield in the flat. He cannot do it. He couldn't do it then. Still can't do it now. So I'm saying, please get healthy soon, Dre Greenlaw.
I think we're going to see him. That's my bold prediction. I think we're going to see Dre Greenlaw this week. And I could be wrong. And if I am wrong, I'll say, hey, guys, let's shoot for week 4 against the Joe Burrow-less Bengals. What a tough break for them, dude. By the way, I mean, they're an opponent this year and their conference foe and all that, but that's the only thing that could hold Joe Burrow back from becoming one of the greatest of all time, Zach, is that gum injury bug.
Every quarterback, it seemed, went down today. I saw McCarthy's out. He has an ankle sprain. It's been a lot throughout the NFL. Fortunately, Bo Nix is healthy.
But I think in the case of J.J. McCarthy, Zach, it's one game he's expected to miss. Burrow, 3 months, September, October, November, December. You're done unless you made the playoffs. You're done, basically, right? Like, you might come in the last 2 games of the season, maybe, if you're lucky. So I don't know. It's a bummer, dude. I feel bad for him because he's such a good guy and a great quarterback and fun to watch. And that city definitely is going to be missing him. All right, back to the chat for a second. Let me see here what David's saying. The problem with Sean is he's trying to prove everyone wrong and make Bo look like a top 5 quarterback. He's not a top 5 quarterback yet, guys. Could he become a top 5 quarterback? I think all of us, even in the pits of our disappointment right now with how things have started this season, could still say, yeah, we see that as a potential ceiling for Bo becoming a top 5 guy, especially with a Sean Payton as his. But it's pretty clear, Zach, he's not close to being a top 5 guy yet. That could even change this year. I'm not expecting it to, for what it's worth. But you still got 15 games, as was mentioned earlier. Goes back to the expectation thing once again.
Yeah, if Sean Payton himself didn't hype up Bo Nix to be a top 5 guy within the next couple of years or whatever he said, top 3 or 4, and then I don't think we would see this pass happy game script. And I agree, David. I've said this on multiple occasions. It seems like Sean is going out of his way to make Bo Nix this thing through the air. And he's quite honestly not there yet in his development. They need to lean on the running game and let Bo capitalize off that. But that's Sean for you. He's stubborn. He's hard-headed. He's arrogant. He's cocky. He thinks he knows better, and he thinks he's smarter. And when that comes out in a negative way, it's not good.
By the way, the tweet I originally read, there must have been more information later. Scott's reminded me here, or pointing out to me, 2 to 4 weeks on McCarthy. That means he will have played 2 games and missed 20 so far through 2 seasons. That's brutal. B-Rad again, dude. Our inside linebackers get cooked most of the time. Run, man. Running man. Yeah, they were pretty bad yesterday. The Colts, I got to tell you, I don't think Sternad and Singleton are as bad as they looked yesterday. Genuinely. I think the Colts just had the perfect plan. Because we talked about this, Zach, for months leading up to the season. On paper, what was the weakness of this defense? Even with Greenlaw in there, because of his injury history and the lack of reliability in terms of projecting, it's the second level of that defense. It was always going to be the inside linebackers. And the Colts, you just tip your cap to them, dude. Like, they had the right game plan to exploit Denver's biggest weakness, which was their inside linebackers and just overall their run defense. And then it didn't help that the secondary turned in one of its worst collective, hey, we're all on the grass, we're all healthy. That was bad, dude. Colby, good to see Colby Collier jumping in, dude, on YouTube, the Triple C. Normally we see Colby as obviously a Facebooker, but here he is, not only throwing down a super sticker, but also he's become a member. Legend, dude. He says here, is it the O-line that we still can't have a good to great run game and in short yardage situations? No, honestly, guys, it's a philosophical weakness of Sean Payton. My dog likes to throw the ball. And so when you're constantly having to remind yourself to run it type thing, instead of going in saying, hey, if he had a kind of soul-searching moment, Zach, you mentioned it earlier, they need to just say, look, we're going to be a run-first offense, come hell or high water, and let the chips fall. Then I think you'd see it improve at a greater rate than it has. But Zach, it has improved already this season, I would say. Like the first 2 weeks so far, I've been encouraged by the steps forward that the rushing game has taken. Now, just imagine if Sean Payton can even stay more committed and balanced to it. But, we're talking real quick, and then I'm serving this back to you, Zach. The leading rusher of the Broncos, J.K. Dobbins, had 14 carries this week, 16 carries last week. That's for a Sean Payton Broncos team. He's trying to stay committed to it. And then you had you had 7 more additional planned runs, not counting Bo Nix scrambles. So that's 21 total planned rushing attempts.
The running game looks better than last season because the talent level has improved from last season. It's funny how that works. I just wish Sean would commit to the run on a consistent basis. And remember, they're also trying out the new wide zone blocking schemes, a lot of substitutions, which I'm not a fan of with Sean Payton, Chad. So a lot of moving parts, Colby, that go into the operation. I think the offensive line is getting better. They're not regressing in run blocking.
We have the D-dub again. Always feel special and grateful when we get to have Dale in the chat 2 days in a row, dude. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
Great to see you, brother. Much love. He says, with a very generous top rope super chat, a win against the Chargers will go a long way to soothe the pain. No, we got a tough, very important game this Sunday. We can all point out the things that cost us this past week. I trust the coaches will be coaching. Looking forward to Sunday. Yeah, baby. That would be a great way to get back on the horse by ending the streak. I can't remember how far it stretches or if it does stretch into 2023 off the top of my head. But we all know, off the top of my head, easy to remember, Jim Harbaugh as Chargers head coach, 2-0 against Sean Payton Broncos, swept them last year. So if you can get off that particular schneid versus the Chargers, get to 2-1, take on a Burrow-less Bengals team, you'll have yourself a nice little shot of courage, right? Some feeling your strength a little bit going into week 4 if you can pull it off.
There is no better deodorizer than winning. Right now, there's a stench around the Broncos' week 2 loss. I promise you that stench will go away quickly with a win on Sunday. You're absolutely correct, Dale. Thank you so much.
So great to see you, brother. Hope you're doing well. And thank you for the support, man. Means the world to us. B-Rad, again, dude, going off in the super
Thank you,
chat
Brad.
tonight, saying if we can beat the Chargers, we may be onto something. It's a must-win game for sure. Yeah, it's looking like, hey, it might be too soon to say this because, I'm still reminded of all those times, so many seasons, man, down the second half of the Brady Belichick time together, the era where, you get 4 or 5 games into the season, things aren't shaping up. They're, 2-3 or whatever it might be. And people are saying that's it. Turn the page. The dynasty or the reign is officially over. As long as Andy Reid and Mahomes are a tandem in Kansas City, odds tell me they're going to be a factor. But that's a long-winded way, Zach, of saying, going to Brad's point, it's looking like, at least the early shape, the way it's shaping up, that the AFC West could be going through the Chargers this year in terms of the Broncos' biggest threat. Okay, what I'm saying. So maybe it is a must-win game. I have a hard time calling a game that's not in December or January must-win, but it's a big game.
I want to see a full, complete effort from the Broncos. I feel like they played down to their level of competition through the first couple weeks, and I think they're going to play up to their level against the divisional rival in the Chargers. Even if they win, though, of course, I'll be happy with the dub. I would want, though, to see consistency after that. I don't want them to beat the Chargers and then drop a game to the Bengals and go on this alternate win-loss. I want to see them put something together like you're saying there, Brad, and keep it going.
No doubt. David Youngkin also throwing down a super because he's an absolute stud, and we appreciate him. Thank you, buddy. He says, we draft a running back and bring in a running back to have 5 players run the ball for, 115 yards? Smart, Sean. LOL. Well, I mean, what was it week 1? I got to remind myself of this. Week 1, the Broncos had a total of 151 rush yards. So that's in the territory you want to be. Like, that's a very active, productive run game. And then, to step it down a little bit to 118 yesterday, Zach, it's not so low that I'm going, come on, dude, what's going on? There's north of 100. I'm not making too many complaints. It just depends on the flow of the game. But I will agree, Zach, that they could have relied a bit more on the ground game in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter, than they did. Sean Payton getting the pass happy thing, man. And that turnover was the initial, now I won't call it the death nail, Zach, but it was the beginning of the turning of the tide.
Well, Sean Payton keeps saying it's hard to feed 3 running backs. It's hard to feed 3 running backs. Why do we have to feed 3 running backs? Why can't they just feed Dobbins and Harvey? And anyone else agree? Is it time to remove Bidet from this offense? Can we free Jaleel McLaughlin from whatever doghouse he's in? Because as a 3rd running back, I don't think it's working out too well.
This is fair, Brad. I see what you're saying. He says all division games are a must-win, in my opinion. Thank you again for that super chat, bro. And I think that's fair. I'm not going to nitpick you on that. Get out there and get your first win against the Chargers as led by Jim Harbaugh, Zach.
Absolutely.
Got to get her done. Thank you, B-Rad. Okay, where are we at? We're at 48 minutes. We're getting pretty close here. So, guys, consider this kind of the 2-minute warning. Any burning questions or topics, get it in the chat, and we'll get to it before we dip. I want to grab this from our friend Glenn Ashley on Facebook, checking in from Oz, saying, good morning, Chad, Zach, and Broncos country. Every season you lose a game in this type of fashion. Last year it was the Chiefs. Everything's building. Be patient. They don't hand out Super Bowls in September. State of being, Broncos for life, MHH for life. Yeah, buddy. So again, once it's great wisdom. I think it's excellent context. And yeah, I think that's a fair way of putting it, Zach. Each year you kind of have one of those just, it keeps you up at night kind of heartbreaking losses. Yesterday it was a cycle of just guffaws, or they're stepping on the rake. I don't think I've ever been rendered speechless, like in a near fugue state by a loss, like I was in that Chiefs loss last year at Arrowhead, though. That one was brutal, dude.
Yeah, there's been a few. The Colts game for the Russ here, 12-9 overtime, and and in Power Field, there's been a lot of brutal losses, and this is right up there. But Glenn, I'm so happy there's rational fans within Broncos country. You're definitely one of them because this is the way right here. Patience, breathe, everything will be okay.
Keith, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. Thanks for being with us tonight, my brother. Mike says, I've just come to accept that I don't like Sean Payton's offense. And hey, maybe that's fine. That's fair, buddy. Pearl, one of our great members, says, hey, I admit I've never been a big fan of
The
VJ.
dichotomy here is great, isn't it, Chad?
Explain.
I mean, you have one person saying they're not a fan of Sean Payton's offense. The next person saying not a fan of VJ's defense. And I think there's some truth. I agree. I can make cases for both. Certainly, I have my gripes about Sean Payton's play calling, and you guys know I've never been a fan of VJ. This is why we can have these discussions, get it all out there, because we can find a middle ground at the end of the day.
String Guy says, I kind of get Payton's mindset. He has what he thinks will be a Super Bowl quarterback, and he's just pass happy. He has to remember to call a balanced run-pass game. He does, and all those years and all that success he had with Drew Brees, I mean, a sustained period of a sustained reign, for lack of a better term, maybe not a reign, but they did win a world championship. That has kind of led to some preferences and some predilections on Payton's part, but Bo Nix isn't quite there. You got to remember when Sean Payton crossed paths with Drew Brees, you know, he was what, a fifth-year pro? Was it his fifth year? 06, I want to say. 2000, or was he a 2001? Either way. Maybe even, maybe sixth. Either way, it doesn't matter. My point being, Drew Brees, by the time, hey, perfect situation, he ended up landing right where he should have gone. But Zach, he was coming off a relatively decorated young career in San Diego, had led a team to the playoffs, had gotten a Pro Bowl nod. If he doesn't injure the shoulder in that season finale the year prior, 2005, against the Broncos, shout out Gerard Warren, if you guys remember that sickeningly sad play that he got hurt on. Maybe he doesn't end up in New Orleans. Maybe the Chargers find a way to like re-sign him, trade him. I don't know. Who cares? I'm digressing a little bit here. My point on the whole issue, Zach, is Sean Payton's got to remember, even though he sees Drew Brees-esque type of ceiling in Bo Nix, Bo's still a young player. He still has a lot to learn in the league. That's got to be tempered into kind of how Sean Payton calls offense.
Remember the quote from earlier this offseason? He said the best thing we can do for Bo is also get the middle of the defense figured out. That strange comment. And then the Joker with the tight end. The best weapon for Bo, as we've seen him through 2 games in year 2, is a dominant or at least capable rushing attack. And through 2 games, we can say the Broncos have a capable, if not eventually dominant, rushing attack. Please, Sean, run the ball.
Yeah, and so thank you, Mr. Producer. So Drew Brees lands in New Orleans in his 6th year. And it wasn't exactly, Zach, if you everybody thinks back, just real quick, gangbusters out of the gates. He did immediately, though, set new career highs in yards and touchdowns. So he in 2006, his first year with Payton, he won 10 games, threw for 4,400 yards and 26 touchdowns. Both of those marks were new career. Well, no, not the touchdowns. The yardage was a career high. But he really turned the corner, and the team did, in 2009, which was 3 years after his first year in New Orleans. And that's where things really began to pop, and the rest is history. So Bo Nix, I guess this is me saying, look, Rome wasn't built in a day. Sean Payton is wise enough to know that. He's trying to perhaps accelerate and microwave the growth factor for Bo Nix a little bit. And I think we still got to trust him on this, to be honest with you, because who expected what you got out of Bo Nix last year? Like, we were all stoked on Bo Nix. I was high on Bo Nix. You guys know this. So was Zach before the draft. After the draft, even more so, because we knew he had landed in a place where it was such a great fit with Sean Payton. But guys, I'd be lying to you if I would say that I expected the Broncos in my heart of hearts to win 10 games year 1 with Bo, and for Bo Nix to nearly throw for 30 touchdowns. Like, I did not see that coming. I didn't. I figured he'd be like high teens, low 20s in touchdowns, Zach, and probably somewhere around 3,500 yards passing. He ended up doing a little bit better than that in passing yardage. He didn't like blow the doors down in passing yardage. But nevertheless, Sean Payton proved last year that, he can kind of accelerate things a little bit with Bo Nix if we trust him a little bit. So I'm not ready yet, Zach, to condemn the Sean Payton approach and plan with Bo Nix in the offense, although that doesn't mean we can't critique it.
Here's the funny thing. If the Colts miss that kick and there's no penalty, we're all talking about how Bo threw 3 touchdowns. We're talking about Troy Franklin's coming out party. And because Bo actually played well, and that's what we have to focus on and take out of the positive from that game.
And a lot of the scrutiny, let's be honest, and talking points and storylines right now with the Broncos sitting at 1-1 are a result of the deflated sense that the fans and the media have after Sean Payton essentially called this a Super Bowl team already, right? So, like, Sean Payton only has himself to blame for that. You could have had your cake and eaten it too by just keeping the whole Super Bowl thing talk. Because I agree with a good mark of a visionary leader, Zach, is you have to be bold in your objectives and you got to voice them. And people that either are working for you or with you have to be able to catch that vision too. And the only way for them to catch it is for you to vocalize it, paint the picture. I don't blame him for painting that picture internally, leaking it to the press, and his whole thing about, I've had whatever 6-7 teams I felt this way about, and that just put undue pressure and scrutiny on it that, is creating some bad headlines for him now. Does that affect the product on the field? Not necessarily, but it's just more pressure this early that they didn't necessarily need, but Sean Payton basically asked for.
And that's just Sean Payton. And when it works, you love him. And when it doesn't, you don't love him.
Todd, real quick, Sutton had 4 targets. Was it 4 targets? Let me double check that. 4 targets for Cortland Sutton yesterday. He caught 1 for 6 yards, and one of those failed targets was a Bo Nix interception, for what it's worth. But guys, we got a few messages for you that we're going to check the chat one last time before we dip, so don't leave quite yet.
Tremendous episode, as always, of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on X at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on X at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every single podcast, check out MHHmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't done so yet, please drop us a like at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at Mile_High_Huddle. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football pre-save 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please, very, very important, as always, that you subscribe, you like, you share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Hey, Roger, by the way, buddy, I did see the pictures of your new guitar, dude. It looks awesome. Your custom T5Z. I'm stoked for you, man. It looks awesome. Yeah, you'll have to send me a little playing clip. Let me know how it sounds, big dog. Naj's point here, we need Sutton more involved. Bo missed a couple of fade routes to him. That said, Bo played well. He's got talent, just needs to keep growing, and Payton has to keep his confidence up. That's a big reason why you're seeing Sean Payton, guys, by the way, falling on swords 2 weeks straight. I got to be better. He's trying to keep his quarterback's head up, and that of his locker room, by the way. And a good leader does that. A good leader will take the blame, even if it isn't necessarily directly his fault. The buck stops with you as the head coach. But I don't blame him for taking that approach. I don't think Bo Nix, just by his vibe yesterday, Zach, what we've seen, is lacking in confidence. I mean, he was straight up, once again, John with Payton on the sideline, and I love seeing that. And clearly, it's not anything Sean Payton is even thinking twice about. Like, this is just 2 guys fired up in the moment. He's going, why'd you throw it there on that play? Why didn't it go to the Z instead of the Y or whatever, right? That's probably what he was asking. You knew what the hot was. Why did it go X, whatever? And Bo's like, probably, this is my estimation, right? Bo's probably screaming back at him. Well, yeah, but did you see what the freaking safety did after I snapped it? Da-da-da-da. That's the two guys trying to win together in the trenches. So I love seeing it. I think that passion shows you like these guys are competitors. They're fired up and they're trying to do something great.
Well, we overcomplicate this a lot, Chad. Cortland Sutton's the best receiver on the Broncos. Evan Ingram's the best tight end. And for now, J.K. Dobbins is the best running back. Get your best players the football, plain and simple.
Yeah. All right, guys, a mile high salute. A special shout out to the great Super Chat superstars, supporters, and dear members helping us keep the lights on tonight, like Sam Bam, the Papa Bear, Naj, legend, Taylor, also a member, Cullen, Gene William, great to see you, buddy. B Rad, multiple times. Colby, great to see you on Super Chat tonight, my brother. D Dub checking in from Paradise 2 days in a row. Always love seeing Dale. David Yunkin, much love and respect, you guys. We appreciate you. Tonight, StreamYard did not want to connect to the main MHH Facebook, so we streamed only to the MHH podcast Facebook page, which is another reason why you want to make sure you're following that Facebook page, because if we do have problems, StreamYard connecting to Facebook, it's almost always the big page, the big Facebook page with 100-something thousand followers, not the MHH pod page. So there's a reminder for you. But we're off till Thursday as a duo, but Zach's back tomorrow for members on YouTube. Kelberman's Korner at noon Mountain Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. Be ready.
Hope to see y'all then. More hot takes that hold water. Have a great start to your week. Chad and I will see you Thursday night. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.